One big problem which I observed in myself and in others was that a lot of the time I have no idea what to do and why I should do it. You have these different tasks which you have to do every day. You go to school, you go to work, you do something, and all of these tasks require some understanding of why you're doing them. You might be doing them for money, you might be doing them for some kind of self satisfaction. But either way, I realized that modeling myself off of the knowledge of really great leaders like Steve Jobs or Martin Luther King and so on, all of these people had a different way of approaching the direction of understanding why I'm doing something, which I think is very valuable for me to communicate right now. So, one of those things, the idea is when you think about one of the most famous speeches by Martin Luther King, motivates him, which drives him to go on, is the feeling, the idea that one day black and white children can hold hands together, that from every part of the Union, the United States, people will stand together and work without prejudice. And that big idea, that ultimate goal, is really what makes his speeches, his ideas, and the civil rights movement in general, to me at least, so inspiring. Similarly, Steve Jobs, he has and had a sense of direction, of purposefulness, which always steered him. He always wanted to create a really great product for people, and he wouldn't stop until he arrived at that goal. So, thinking about it that way, what should be our own direction? What is the thing that will help us lead ourselves towards some goal that we want to achieve? Well, the thing that I began to do is, first of all, to define what are the biggest things which are preventing me from having positive interest in life. You can very easily find those things because you feel them all the time. That's why they're so important. When you feel depressed by your own inability to work, that usually means that you want to do more, or you want some clear direction of where you should go, what you should do, for whom you're doing it. So, defining these things is really easy, these big, broader goals, because you're feeling them all the time. That's what emotions are kind of for. They give you a general direction, a general idea of what you're missing. If you're feeling sad, well, then obviously you're missing some element of satisfaction from your life. If you're feeling angry, then maybe there's something that's troubling you, taking away from your stability and feeling that everything's going your way. And when you define these big feeling-based goals, then, and this is the most fun part, you can begin to define slightly clearer ideas of how you should direct them. So, in my case, one of the big things which was troubling me for the last couple of years actually was the feeling that my environment, my social environment, is very scant. There's very little going on there. That was partially because I decided to work at home and I decided to do things in a very isolated way, but it also was a lack of effort put into social interaction. So once I realized that, once I saw that this was one of the biggest things I was lacking, you can begin to define steps that you'd like to take to alleviate that problem. So the direction is, I want to create a more social environment, and then the steps are, well, you have to figure out what these steps are. And you do that by defining a focus. Whereas your goal is the big thing, the thing that is determining where you want to go, the floodlight which determines the general direction, your focus is the more precise, more concrete thing you're supposed to do. My social problem had a very simple solution to it, which in my case was to apply to a university, because I thought, well, if I lack social interaction and lack some discourse, continual discourse, well, then maybe what I could do is try out a university, try out a different degree, which would allow me to then have this social interaction. In your case, maybe it's going to be the lack of work, lack of discipline that you need to now focus on to achieve more positive experiences. So that's the aim. Then the focus is the more concrete thing. As I mentioned, in my case, it was the university. In general, it should be something clearer that you're supposed to do. And then finally, the lowest level are the tasks, the things that directly lead you to the goals and aims you have. So how do we define all of this? It seems a very difficult and abstract idea, but it's actually very simple. First of all, aims, as I said, were based on your emotions. Then the focus is simply considering what one thing is the most necessary to achieve that aim. When I was faced with my social interaction problem, in my case, the biggest thing I could have done was to create an environment around myself through the university. So that was the focus. That was what I had to focus on the most to achieve that goal. And then finally, once you have the focus and you have the aim, which you now know how to do, you create tasks around it. So, what is necessary to achieve the focus and the aim? Continuing my university example, it could be to create an application, to prepare for studies, and so on. All of these things could eventually achieve that goal. So, once we have all these things, once we have a direction and we continually have the ability to adjust and consider it as our feelings change and as our thoughts change, how do we pivot our goals and how do we pivot so we're continually going along the path we want the most? Because before I said that it's possible not to have a direction, but then again, how do we make it so as it's continually going along that path? Well, you do it by gathering information, gathering the feelings that you have as a result of your behavior. So, for example, if I went to university now and I felt miserable, well, that would mean that something along the way didn't quite fit with my goals. My goal was to have greater social interaction, but maybe I feel even more isolated somehow. In that case, you have to continually shift and observe the feelings you have over time so that you can observe the patterns that emerge from them. And once you do that, wow, it's really easy to have a direction at that point. Just like all these great leaders who can sense what is supposed to be done in the future, that's how they make the most effective decisions. Similarly, by observing your own emotions, by considering, do I really feel that this is the thing that I want to do? And thinking about it over time, seeing what patterns emerge, you can consistently find the thing that's most troubling you or the biggest opportunity and respond to it and actually achieve it. It requires a great deal of self-observation of considering, okay, what am I feeling now? Do I feel satisfied? Do I feel dissatisfied? Do I feel angry? But eventually, over time, you'll figure out that there are certain patterns to the emotions you have, and once you have these patterns, you can adjust and change your strategy to match them. So to summarize, the pattern of looking at your direction, looking at your life, and first seeing the big, broader scope ideas, like what do I like the most, then finding the more concrete ways of doing it, the focus, and then finally the precise task which achieve that focus, you can allow yourself to continually steer and move your goals such that you're always feeling the best. Then with a great deal of self-observation and considering, okay, what am I thinking now? What am I feeling now? Is this path really making me satisfied or not? You can find new evidence of what you should do next. Just by these things, by seeing what they can result in, the patterns, you can find the different solutions to your problems. And in doing so, you not only adjust your goals, but you adjust your happiness as well, which is eventually what you're aiming at. So I think that's the idea that I wanted to share here, and I hope you found it fun. For now, bye.